It's Friday, and that means it's time for a look through some of the important global business stories from the weekend. For that, we're now joined by our Eunice Kim in the studio. Hi, Eunice.
Happy Friday.
All right, so without a doubt, the biggest news of the week is obviously the surprising U.S. presidential election win by Donald Trump.
Yeah, absolutely. What a surprise it was, right? Donald Trump claiming that needed 270 electoral votes with a stunning upset victory in the state of Wisconsin this week. It was an emotional result for either sides of the aisle. But despite this shock, the transition process is well underway in the world's largest economy.
They may have been the fiercest of enemies during the bitter campaign season. But just 2 days after one of the most divisive U.S. presidential elections in recent memory came to an end, President-elect Donald Trump was given a cordial welcome to the White House on Thursday local time.
This was a meeting that was going to last for maybe 10 or 15 minutes, and we were just going to get to know each other. We had never met each other. I have great respect. We discussed a lot of different situations, some wonderful and some difficulties. I very much look forward to dealing with the president in the future, including counsel.
We talked about some of the organizational issues in setting up a White House. We talked about foreign policy. We talked about domestic policy. And as I said last night, my number one priority in the coming 2 months is to try to facilitate a transition that ensures our president-elect is successful.
After clinching more than 270 electoral votes this week, Donald Trump will move into the White House in January to become the 45th president of the United States. So what could his 4-year term look like?
I have the feeling that he's going to delegate a great deal to his staff, which is something that George W. Bush did also, and that generated a great deal of infighting. I would imagine that the Trump administration will see a lot of empire building by staff around him.
Political scientist Robert Kelly says he expects to see an easing of Obama-era fiscal restraint, as the outsider president-elect has promised spending in infrastructure and defense. That he would follow through pushed the Dow to record highs on Thursday. But the question is, how will he be able to pull that off amid a promised tax cut?
Trump may posture as an outsider, but the people around him, people like Rudy Giuliani and Chris Christie and Newt Gingrich, have all been in this racket, this business, for a long time. In the past, the Republicans, quite honestly, under George W. Bush, have simply borrowed in order to fund both of those things. The deficit exploded under George W. Bush. I would imagine that it will go back up under Donald Trump, and that will raise all kinds of new issues about budgeteering.
So there are still a lot of unknowns as to what we can expect from a Trump presidency. But the surprise this week was the global rally.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, one of the biggest concerns that had immediately emerged following news of the Trump's win originated from Japan. Now, as we reported this week, we saw the Japanese yen, a safe haven asset, soar against the greenback, touching 101 yen amid this spike in uncertainty. What would a Trump presidency mean for America and the world economy? But, you know, things have been changing quite drastically, as we are now seeing the yen actually dropping to a 3.5-month low, as investors, number one, now know who the next U.S. president will be, and also, two, they are becoming optimistic, perhaps cautiously optimistic, about possible fiscal stimulus that could be coming out of the U.S. in the years to come. And across the Pacific Ocean, this could be good news for Bank of Japan Governor Haruhiko Kuroda, as he has been, you know, battling a rising yen. In fact, Donald Trump had included mention of infrastructure investment in his early morning acceptance speech, showing priority there. And his transition team, in fact, has promised to put $550 billion toward building new roads and cities, and they're also hoping that by cutting taxes and lowering regulations, people will begin spending again. Now, the fact that both houses of Congress went to Republicans this week, with House Speaker Paul Ryan attributing that surprise sweep to the Trump momentum, people are perhaps cautiously optimistic that there could be more of a spirit of cooperation than we saw with Obama and a Republican Congress.
Right. And also, chances of a Fed rate hike in December, or, according to analysts, are also back up. But still, we are concerned about stuff on trade.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you spoke earlier, we, of course, are on alert here in Korea. But over in Japan, there is real concern as to the fate of the Trans-Pacific Partnership Pact, since that is a big part of Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's plan to improve Japan's GDP. And while the global credit rating agency S&P came out this week following the presidential announcement to affirm its investment grade rating on the U.S. With a nod to America's, quote, long-standing institutional strengths and robust checks and balances. That does not take away from the protectionist trade sentiment in the United States, nor Washington's, quote, high general government debt. So definitely watch this space.
So a lot to keep our eyes on as Donald Trump gets ready for his inauguration in January.
And we will definitely be watching.
Thank you so much for coming in today.
Sure thing.